Hey, Kim.
Hello.
Hopefully it'll be a larger group soon.
Yes. I know the only one I've heard from is Steve Dorat is unable to attend. He has a conflict with the building committee.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay.
Christy will join us as well.
Okay. What do we need? Do we need 3 for a quorum or 4?
4.
Okay.
I did remind Bob Haley. I saw him yesterday and reminded him.
Okay.
One of the things, I'm not sure if you had a chance to see it, I did email, and probably only about an hour ago, the Excel sheet that we'll screen share, just because I know sometimes depending on what device you're on, it's hard to read it.
I did see that.
Hi, Ian.
Hey, Ian.
Hey, Kim. Hey, Jim. Hey, Lisa.
What big things are happening over at Select Board these days? Any hot button items or just the regular?
Just the regular. Everything's hot.
Yeah, right? Nothing easy, huh?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
Hey, Bob.
Thank you. I think what we're talking about tonight is one of the hot buttons right now. Kind of budget planning for next year.
Money. Why
Yeah.
should we be any different than the federal government, right?
Yeah.
We just don't have $1 trillion in our budget. Man,
Exactly.
That would take care of a lot of things, wouldn't it?
Yeah. You just can't do that deficit spending, you know?
I wish. I'd like to see the size of that printing press. It's got to be pretty big. Thanks, Christy. Hey, Christy.
Hi.
So we just want to give a second, see if Andrew jumps on. Why don't I go ahead and read the disclosure? Is that all right?
Perfect.
Welcome to the Thursday, December 9th Capital Expenditures Planning Committee meeting. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted via remote means. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so through the Zoom link that was provided. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, and public participation in any public hearing conducted during this meeting shall be by remote means only. Anybody else going back to remote these days? You still doing in person, Ian?
Yeah, I just came from Boston today, so nothing's changed. It's still kind of part-time in, part-time out. And I think that's the way it's going to be. It sounds now like it's going to be that long-term.
Interesting. I just had a meeting with the CEO of one of our office building portfolios.
Yeah. And
their releasing activity is picking up markedly, which is interesting. 94% leased across all their major markets.
Wow.
In the last 90 days, he said releasing activity has picked up, and tours have picked up a lot. So
now major cities or in smaller?
Yeah, these are all major cities.
Yeah, I mean, Boston is still pretty financial district is a ghost town still.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I was in Austin the last 3 days, and there's a lot of cranes down there still.
Yeah.
They own 3 properties in Austin, San Jose, Atlanta, Chicago. Actually, the Minneapolis building is surprisingly 98% leased.
Wow. Well, I wonder if, some of the stuff in Boston's leased, but there's no one in it because they signed long-term leases. The question is when they roll over, will the rent stay as high? But yeah, Boston's the same way. They're building that huge building on Federal Street, which I just heard they actually have chopped some of the floors off it, and then they're building the one above South Station, and they're getting ready to build the one over the Pike.
Or the Pike,
Back Bay, yeah. So it's still a ton of cranes there too.
Hard to stop some of those once they're going, you know.
Well, some of them were what, 10, 15 years in the planning stages. So.
Exactly. Well, should we go ahead?
Yeah.
Perhaps Andrew's not going to join us. So why don't you, did you have a question, Lisa?
No, just.
Oh, okay.
She said, yes, go ahead, please.
Stretching your
Yes,
hands.
let's get going.
All right. So I think over to you, Kim, and then perhaps Christy.
Sure.
Do you want to do the minutes first?
Yes, if everyone had a chance to look at them,
Okay.
why don't we just take care of that?
We did get those November 18th minutes. Any questions anyone had on those? Motion, I would accept the motion to approve.
I move their approval.
All right, I'll go ahead and second that. Let me do a quick roll call. Lisa?
Please, Jiski, yes.
Robert? Bob, did you hear me there?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. I used the formal name. I threw you off.
He doesn't go by Robert, so Johnson,
Right.
yes.
Leah?
I was muted. Yeah.
That's all right. I saw you saying yes, I thought. Great. And Ball, yes. All right, let's go ahead with the operating budget discussion.
So our fearless leader is here with us tonight. Christy is going to, we have been, we're working on the FY23 budget. It's due on December 21st. As part of that process, there are a number of things in the works. We're obviously looking at the capital requests. As you recall, at our last meeting, we went through the prioritization of the projects based on the scoring that I have shared with Christy and the finance team as we look at the budget, figuring out what of that we can fit and where based on requested funding amounts, requested funding sources. So what we have tonight is we want to provide a little bit of context of what is going on the budget front, as well as go through what our thinking is right now. These are preliminary recommendations. This is not final, but of what projects we would actually bring forward in the proposed capital budget. Christy, do you want to speak about the context? Or do you want me to just pull up the spreadsheet?
Yeah, why don't you just pull up the spreadsheet?
Bear with me one moment.
I'll just mention while you're doing that we're actually going to give the select board a preview of the FY23 budget on Tuesday evening. We don't usually do this in advance of the town manager recommended budget, but the reason for it is that we've seen a significant increase in residential value. I think we're all aware of people. The real estate market is hot. People are paying way over asking for houses. And so we've seen the values really spike. And so we obviously that plays into what we might be forecasting for our increased average single family. And so we really want to get that information out there. And so that's going to be all presented on Tuesday night.
Okay. Can everybody see?
Kim, just quick comment. I just got an email from Andrew that he's also in the school building committee meeting and will join us when that's complete.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And is everybody able to see the screen I shared?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what this shows is the projects, all of the projects that you heard about and reviewed. The column that's labeled average, that shows the prioritization score. And then we have the proposed funding source. That was what the department proposed, the amount of the request. And then as we slide over, this shows, again, preliminary. recommended funding by source. And it shows you both. Sorry, I'm trying to get it. I'm not sure if you can see as much as I can see. Let me hide a couple columns so that you can see the project name. All right. Does that work? Are you able to see the project and then all of the columns?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So basically, you're seeing the funding request in column E, and then what we are showing is a proposed funding plan, which if you look at column that's free cash, these are the projects that at this time we would envision proposing come out of free cash. And you'll note that's 1.4 million, a little bit higher than what we've had in recent years. Last meeting, we had a lot of discussion about the fact that the engine 2 replacement, that was the most highly rated project, but funding that from free cash would use up a significant amount of the free cash that we typically use for this plan. So we actually have that over in the other column. And at this point, we've potentially identified another funding source. Christy, do you want to jump in on that?
That's our federal government spending, Jim, that you were talking about.
I thought Christy was going to pay for it. I was going to say,
exactly. It's going to be the Williams fire truck. She's going to put her name inside of it.
Well, as long as you put my name on it, then
naming rights.
Thanks for that,
trucks.
Christy. We're going to have to look at your contract. I think we're paying you too much.
Yeah, so we're going to look at alternative funding sources. That obviously wasn't planned for FY23. We have paid for the fire apparatus out of free cash. We've also paid for it previously out of overlay surplus. Unfortunately, and I think Chief Purcell would have maybe explained this, is that because of the way their apparatus is, it sort of clusters in, I think they figured out every like 9 to 11 years, we get this cluster of apparatus, and then we'll go several years without having to replace it. So because you've identified it as such a highly rated item, but because of the cost of it, I think we're not going to recommend that it come out of free cash, but that we'll put it on the plan and continue to review other potential funding sources, which could be a borrow or something else.
Okay.
Do you want me to keep going? Or?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the other big ticket items?
Yeah. So the 1.4, just so that we're clear, our comprehensive fiscal management policies recommends that we replace capital at 1 to 1.5% of our general fund operating budget. So the top end of that is about 1.7 million. So we're within that for use of our free cash here. One of the things that we've identified, and we're going to have further conversation, one of the police vehicles was all over the news. One of the police vehicles is going to be replaced because it was totaled in an accident on Route 9. And so there might be the ability to pull out one of those police vehicles and still achieve the same replacing 4 in a fiscal year. So that's one of the ones that we're continuing to look at with the chief and the deputy chief.
So that's through insurance, Christy?
Yeah, it would be through our insurance, and it wasn't our officer's fault, so likely subrogated to their insurance. Yep. And then the street sweeper replacement, Kim identified an opportunity here to put maybe some of the cost into the enterprise funds, because it really does, or the water retained earnings, because it really does also support water operations. And so Chris is looking at that, how much he's comfortable sort of pushing towards the water operations, but he does agree that a portion of this can be paid for out of the retained earnings, which is why you'll see that we just took 25,000 away, but but we're waiting for him to, or did he already respond?
Yeah, this actually reflects Chris's, he's apportioning a small amount to sewer and a small amount to water retained earnings.
Okay, so that's there. this year, you know, we also have, in addition to the capital budget, we also have the ARPA money, which we're talking about a lot. One of the things that we want to use the ARPA money for is to hire a consultant so that they can help us identify eligible uses of that money. And so one of the projects that you have in the plan has also been applied for ARPA. So that's that 1.5 million for the high school rooftop chiller replacement. Also, that what's not on here is that the school has also identified a need for an additional 1.8 million to complete the Hastings HVAC project. So that had gone to town meeting a couple of years ago. Money was appropriated, or was authorized, and that when they got the bid in, it's the difference is 1.8 million. So that's another ARPA project. So keeping both of those in mind, you know, I want to recommend to all of you that we actually push the Hastings School roof replacement out 1 year, understanding that we have 2 projects that could potentially be borrows depending on their qualification for ARPA funding. So I wasn't privy to that presentation, but that's you know, where that hasn't been on the capital plan in the past, and where there's these other 2 potential borrows, which is outside of our debt strategy. If we can push that to FY24, I think that we would be better situated to fund those other 2 projects.
As long as structurally it's sound, I think that's fine.
Right.
Just so I understand though, Christy, so the 1.8 has been authorized, or is that a new authorization? Is it 1.8 more than what was authorized?
Yes.
So it's 3.6.
So the bid came in more than double?
The Hastings HVAC, I'd have to look at the form, but yeah, it came, you have it.
Yep. So the, yes, the bid came in at 3.8 million. And right now they have 2.1. So they're looking for an additional 1.8 million. And they've built in some contingency into that as well.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So that's not on the, that didn't come before you. And, you know, we're still working through how these projects should come. I mean, obviously the project was previously approved, but given the sort of size of the disparity, we're just keeping that in mind in terms of these other projects. So
I guess the question I have there, sorry, Jim, to jump in, but
right.
Are these, is this HVAC stuff at Hastings, is this rooftop units as well? Do we know?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Oh, Steve joined.
oh, there's Steve.
So I guess go similar. Go ahead,
The
Steve.
redesign of the way the ventilation system in the building works. It's taking the wall-mounted ventilators out and creating the rooftop ventilation system.
So similar to what we talked about extensively on the high school chiller and rooftop. Does it make more? I guess goes back to the question: does it make sense to do them both at the same time in the same year? I think we had the answer that, if I remember, for the high school, that we'd probably want to replace include in the project is replacing a portion of the roof underneath.
Under the chillers.
Under the chillers. So I guess a similar thing here, if we're going to potentially push out Hastings School roof replacement, but we're doing the HVAC, we would need to consider what roof work we'd need to do.
My understanding, Ian, is that and Steve can speak to this, but in the request for the ARPA funding, is that they had received the preliminary design, and so it was proposed as a standalone project. So I would expect that, similar to the rooftop chillers at the high school, any roof work that needed to be done would have been part of that.
Yeah, and I can't speak to the detail of exact planning at this point. but clearly you do want to do the roof at the same time we're changing the penetrations in the roof, but that may be a small section designed properly so you can do the rest of the roof at a later time. But,
right. I think that was, and others helped me out. I think that's what we talked about on the high school with the
Yes.
What came back was we would at least do that portion that would be underneath the new chiller units with a new roof, and then do the rest of the roof at the year later. So I think, yeah, the similar thing. And the question would be is, I just want to make sure that that additional 1.8 would cover the roof piece that needs to get done with the HVAC work.
I think the issue here, you know, to explain, I think why the dollar difference is that there's about a 4-year time frame difference between the beginning of this and the anticipated work and the bid amount versus what finally happened. This whole thing started, if you recall, when we were looking for MSBA approval of certain projects at Hastings, and it got delayed, and as a result of the push in 3 years, we've seen the initial few percent increase year over year, and then the COVID impact on construction. So, I mean, unfortunately, to get it done, this is the more recent information as to what it's going to cost based on the scope of work. But again, I have not been as close to the work reasons that perhaps you already know, and it hasn't been my focus for a while.
Yep. No, I was just bringing it up as something we just want to note, because I just want to make sure that if it moves forward, that we don't
I think
vote and not have enough money to do it.
That if we're forced to delay and for reasons budget purposes, then everything you said, Ian, is an important point to make sure that when it comes around again, that all those issues are addressed.
The 1.8 request for ARPA funding, you know, Amber has identified as a high priority, and we're not clear yet if you can use ARPA funding for something that's already been previously approved and partially funded. And so that's really where we're not sure if it's going to have to come to town meeting as a borrow, or if it can be paid through that grant.
If it turns out you can't, would you then go back to ARPA potentially for the roof replacement at Hastings? Is that a qualified use, or is it got to be just equipment? Like, is the ARPA only allowing for the HVAC equipment?
The ARPA allowance, the eligibility of the projects is extensive, but HVAC really is a clear use of ARPA funding. And so even the rooftop chillers at the high school is more clearly a use of ARPA. So
okay.
I think what the point of this is that we're looking at all three of those, and because there's ARPA at play, and then there's this additional 1.8 that really didn't come before you because it was a previously approved capital project. We just need to sort of balance all of those things as we put this forward.
Okay.
Hey, Jim, one other thing outside of that, just Kim, on the water sewer truck replacement, I think the columns are wrong. I think, shouldn't those be in sewer and water, not water and golf?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I inserted a column and shifted everything. I'll correct that.
Let's try and help the golf course out. They don't want to spend $161,000 out of their retainer.
Although
I don't know if they have that much.
Yeah, but wasn't there something else that? Yeah. What about the multi-purpose mower plow replacement?
No, they get the green mower is theirs.
Not the mower. Yeah. That's not.
Yeah, those are all.
Yeah, that's the road mower, not the mower for the green. I'm thinking of
the greens mower. That $49,000 should be.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Okay.
Yep.
Wrong mower. Thank you. And then I just want to call out that the dog park construction, well, in the grand scheme of the requests, the $25,000, the reason it was originally requested to come from free cash. In having conversations with the recreation director, we believe that the departmental revolving fund could actually cover the cost of this, as well as we've discussed this committee has discussed this when Jen presented. We have a strong expectation that we would also receive some gift money or some support that would offset this $25,000. So realistically, it may be a combination of departmental revolving funds and some gift or donation money. And then the last item, the open space fund request, we are not recommending at this point that any of that be funded through free cash. I know we had some brief discussion after the presentation at the last meeting. I got some comments back when the prioritization was received. There was some discussion about potentially funding the request at a lower amount so that they could have funds available to do appraisals. There are actually other funds for that. If we don't fund it here, there are other places they could potentially turn to for the funding to do the appraisals. So we ultimately zeroed that out for this year.
I think that makes sense.
Any other comments or questions on this or other parts of the presentation?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Lise.
Christy, I know that a lot of the ARPA stuff is still so up in the air, but do they have any timelines established yet? For like, will we know about this before town meeting, or do we have to do it on the fly?
So we hope to have prioritized eligible projects identified in January. We're working with that. We're going to be working with that consultant in order to get someone who spends, hours and hours a day reading through all of the various guidelines from the U.S. Treasury. So they still haven't come out with final guidance on ARPA, but we really want to identify how we might use the money before town meeting, because there are a couple of things as we just talked about that are sort of at play as to whether or not they'll be eligible or funded through ARPA versus a typical town meeting process.
Okay.
So this is Andrew. And
ahead,
I do want to start by saying I'm sorry that I missed the beginning of this conversation. So if this has already been addressed and this is redundant, my apologies. But the question was, I do know that there was a heads up that was shared by Mike on our team about the possibility or discussions around budgetary concerns, looking at the taxes and the changes to the taxes. And I'm guessing that what we're seeing here are the adjustments that are being made in reaction or in response, I should say, to those concerns being raised. But if I may ask just a more high-level question, as it may apply to some of the elements here, is there no change expected in FTE hiring expected going forward based upon the concerns about changes to taxes? And I say that because that has some implications on some of the things happening here.
At the beginning of the meeting, I did give a heads up that we'll be giving a budget preview on Tuesday. I'm not sure how FTEs play into what these capital requests are.
So, for example, police cars, police vehicles, or potentially the school where we're adding FTEs. So, I guess the question was. No, it wouldn't be the school would be here, but the police would.
Well, the police wouldn't, because this is the request for the capital plan for police vehicles is all replacement. It's not additional vehicles.
Okay.
So that's not dependent on more officers, correct?
Right.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? I can't see all of you, so just go ahead and speak up if you are with us on the screen.
Actually, where Andrew came in late, Andrew, did just further that question from Christy. I don't know that you heard that or Steve heard that because we had an unfortunate accident where one of our police cars was totaled by a
drunk
driver. We're looking into it, or Christy and the finance team's looking into it, that we may be able to kind of offset a vehicle in the police vehicle line because of we'll be getting a replacement for that one, insurance monies, because we were at no fault on our side. So that was she just communicated that to us, I think, prior to you and Steve joining. Not definite, but that's what they're working on right now.
Thank you.
Kim, I think you covered all the bullet point items in our discussion other than next steps, I believe. Is that correct?
I believe so. In terms of where we're at now, the budget preview, the board meets on Tuesday night. I would encourage you all to watch that. We also then, the budget is due to the select board and the finance committee on December 21st. So after that, as I think all of you are aware, start digging into it. There's further review during January and February. What I would like to do is, once we have and are ready to put the capital requests into the warrant as an article and identify the requests with the exact funding amounts, I would love for the committee to get together and actually vote your recommendations to be provided at town meeting.
Okay. Maybe we have clarity on both ARPA and the insurance settlement on the cruiser by then.
Hope springs eternal.
That would certainly help.
Yes, it would.
It would. And obviously, if through the course of this, if anything else, drastic, if there are any other significant changes, I know how to get a hold of all of you. But right now, I would anticipate that, that might be potentially a February meeting date, maybe early March, to vote your recommendations. And then I would, we'll figure out how to make sure that they're provided to town meeting.
Great.
And just, we always let you know about the budget hearing, because that's a joint meeting of the select board, the finance committee, and this committee. And that typically happens in January in conjunction with our budget summit day. Also on Tuesday night at the select board meeting, our library director will be presenting more information about the library project and sort of upcoming warrant articles. So I think that'll be really helpful to sort of restart that community conversation. So, and then I'm sure this committee will also weigh in. Kim and I have talked a lot about this committee's meeting more regularly in order to respond to identified needs throughout the year, and not just for the annual town meetings.
Okay. Is there a remote option for the select board meeting, or watch on TV? Is it just live, or obviously come in person?
Definitely, you can watch it on YouTube and on TV.
Yeah, great. I don't think we've determined yet if it's going to be hybrid or just in person, but it doesn't. I don't think it'll be full remote.
Okay. All right. Any other business for this evening?
I guess, Jim. So Kim, do we need? And I think we voted last time, but do we need to vote on this as our recommendation, what you presented tonight? Or are we all set from our side?
You want to wait till that late meeting?
I think what we determined last time is you did the prioritization and agreed that what I took back to Christy, which had that column with the prioritization, that was your prioritization of projects for her consideration and development of the town manager's budget. And then what I'll come back and ask you to vote on is your recommendation for the projects that are actually included in the budget, the capital budget.
Perfect. Sounds good.
So that would be at that February, March meeting. Great.
What's the date for town meeting this year, next year?
I think it's.
Do we know yet, or is it still COVID dependent?
No, it's not COVID dependent.
My God,
it's going away.
Okay.
There's still COVID.
So Ian got rid of COVID, so that's good.
So that's helpful. Very helpful.
March 19th is the date.
Okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
At least it's not in St. Patrick's Day again.
Right, right.
Yeah, I actually attended town meeting on my 40th birthday all day and night as well. That was, yeah.
What a present.
Best
Oh,
birthday
it
ever.
was fantastic.
I love it.
Great.
Well, I will
All right,
move
then.
to adjourn.
I will second that. Let me do a quick roll call. Lisa,
Please just yes.
Bob,
What?
did you say yes? Bob, did you say yes? Is he hearing me? Ian, I'll come back.
I was on mute. Johnson, yes.
Andrew,
Bradley, yes.
Steve,
Brett, yeah.
Leah,
McLean, yes.
Paul, yes. I'll go back to Bob.
Oh, back awake. Haley, yes.
Great. All right, everybody. If I don't see any of you, have a wonderful holiday. Happy New Year. I can't believe it's upon us. Hard to believe.
Scary.
Definitely.
Thanks.
Have a great
Thank you,
night,
everyone.
everybody.
Holidays.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Hey. Bye-bye.